Welcome back. Well, it's earnings season, and key industries have released some of the results for the first quarter of 2023. So let's drill down now on what's happening with these earnings. Joining me now is Shegu Adams, research analyst, AfriInvest Research and Consulting, joining me via Zoom. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much, Ladi. Good morning to you.
Yeah, so I've seen most of these results for top cement producers right here in Nigeria, and I can see that revenue, they've had some hits on revenue for the first quarter of 2023. From your view, what contributed to this?
Yeah, thank you very much. Great to be on your program. So I will describe the performance of listed cement players in Q1 2023 as underwhelming. We saw the likes of Dangote Cement, which is the industry leader, reporting a downturn in top line of around 1.6%, while players like Lafarge African were reporting growth of 1.9 and 9.7% respectively. And then when you look at it in context compared with the corresponding quarter of 2022, you see that these growths that are coming down from levels as high as 24%, 26%, and around 50% for the respective players. On the aggregate, the industry growth was flattish. That's growing by 0.7% compared to 29% year on year in the quarter one for 2022. The performance should actually be looked in context because, like we recall, we had our election, Nigerians went to the poll around that period. Now, the demand for cement in Nigeria is typically driven by housing construction, infrastructure demand. And the sector is a sensitive sector to a lot of what happens in the business environment because, you know, a lot of what goes on in that sector involves heavy capex. So when you look at the private side of the market, with the intense or increase in uncertainty because of the election, businesses, households had to slow down some of their business decisions, roll over heavy capex forward, as well as when you look at the public demand for cement also, it was affected by the shift in focus in government from their typical business of trying to do a lot of investment and ensure that they're pushing out new projects. But there was a shift to ensuring that there will be a smooth transition, whichever administration they have to hand over to. So the combination of these two sort of affected demand for the quarter. But we've also, from our engagement with management of cement companies, we also understand that they're also affected by the Naira redesign policy, which was introduced from the end of 2022, and the most of the impacts was seen in quarter one. The Naira policy was, if you recall, was the CBN's attempt to try to introduce new designs for some key denomination and then withdraw some of the legacy notes. And that caused a bit of disruption, especially for the informal sector, where cash is the main way they can facilitate transactions. So for the cement players, this affected them because in industries like construction, you tend to see workers that operate, informal workers that rely on day-to-day wages. And because of the unavailability of cash, this disrupted operations in that segment. And this sort of rubbed off on the performance of cement. And we also suspect that some of the issues around gas disruptions, which affected performance in 2022, might have also played a role in the performance we saw in Q1. But it's important to note that most of these headwinds, we don't expect it to be persistent. It's one of the election happens once in every 4 years. So for the Naira redesign, we're seeing that CBN has reversed that policy around April. And so we have those old notes back in circulation. But when you look at the election or the political sphere too, it's been a bit of encouraging because some of the concerns people had around political unrest, protests on the scale of NSAS we saw before, all of those have been, the fears have been allayed, and the election or post-election litigations have been channeled through the appropriate tribunals, and we see all of that confined to the courtroom. So that's encouraging. We expect that as the days roll by, all of this uncertainty will really ease, and when there's a transition to a new administration, we'll see that government, there'll be normalization of fiscal activities, and this will positively impact demand for the sector, other things being equal.
Looking at all the headwinds from Q1, what are your expectations for other quarters? Because now we're beginning to see, cash in the economy at this time. So are there any other headwinds that you see coming up in consequent quarters?
So for the subsequent quarters for the year, one thing to note that if you look at the business of the cement business rather, it has a very clear seasonal pattern. That is, if you look at growth on a quarter-on-quarter basis, you see that over time there's a very clear pattern where Q4 tends to be the strongest period of cement growth on a quarter-on-quarter basis, and then this tends to moderate until it reaches a trough in Q3 and then picks up again in Q4. So you tend to see Q4, Q1 very strong growth on a quarter-on-quarter basis, then Q2, Q3, we sort of see some kind of contraction there. And this is not unusual because it follows our weather calendar for the country, where you have rainy season starting from March through November, depending on the region of the country, north or south. They just have a bit of difference. And so cement demand tends to follow that pattern. And because you cannot, the construction industry is affected by the rainy season. When the rains come, you find that construction projects will be put on hold, as well as the case where we have incidents of flooding in Nigeria. So having started the year on that very underwhelming note, when you look at when you do a bit of projection around that, you see that a lot of that gusto is missing out already in the sector. We don't expect Q2 to be too bad compared to Q1 because Q1 was really underwhelming. But we think that it will be a bit flattish. And then when you look at it on an annual basis, it will not really be, we don't really see an impressive outlook for Q2, Q3. And so we think that some of the poor start to the year will affect the sector. In addition, even though some of these factors, like I mentioned, are one-off, we think that it will take a bit of time for the new administration to set up its government, make the necessary appointments. So that fiscal normalization will come maybe later in the year, well into Q3. So by and large, it's not looking very good for this sector, although there's still a bit of reasons to be optimistic that as the year progresses, we'll see a lot of recoveries. But the near-term outlook for especially the next 2 quarters is not very, very, very optimistic as when we were coming into the year.
All right. Well, we'll hope the business environment gets much better going into other quarters. Thank you so much, Segun Adams, research analyst at AfriInvest Research Consulting. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.